My child just dumped me, now what? Welcome to Ground Zero. This is the initial shock phase of parental estrangement. So going into this, you need to know something that is extremely important, and you will not succeed. You will never get over this if you don't understand this one point. Mindset is the key to healing. You have to know that you can do this. Healing begins in the mind, and how you perceive your estrangement impacts how you're going to recover from it. So you're in the shock phase, and you need to know that your reaction is normal. Okay, however you react is probably normal. There is really no right or wrong way to react to this trauma. And I know trauma is a big word that gets thrown around a lot these days. But if you're an average middle-class American parent and you spent your whole life raising your child, doing the best you could, figuring it out, and thought you had a good relationship, and then suddenly, bam, it's gone and you're evil or whatever, it's a shock. And it is a trauma. Trauma is relative. Okay, sure, it's not war. It's not getting a leg chopped off. It is a different kind of trauma, but it is still a very traumatic experience. Another thing to understand about estrangement as you're in this shock phase is that it's not all you, okay? Sure, it's some you, some them, but it's not 100% you. It takes two to have a relationship. And estrangement is happening to good parents everywhere. In the US, 29% of Americans report being estranged from some family member. 27% of American adults have cut off contact with a family member, lasting an average 4.5 years, according to Carl Pilmer. And this isn't just a US thing. In the Western world, it's a trend. 1 in 5 families in the UK are affected by estrangement, according to the BBC. And I've personally talked to families who live in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, Belgium, the Netherlands, who tell me it's happening all across Europe. The other thing to understand about estrangement is that it comes in many forms, and there are many types and reasons for estrangement from family members. Number one is, physical estrangement. You're just apart because you live in different states. Emotional estrangement, you just don't relate to them. Estrangement initiated by children, that's the most common. Sometimes estrangement is initiated by the parents because the child has an addiction, it's on drugs, is just mentally ill or abusive. Then there's just the mutual estrangement. I don't get along with you, you don't get along with me, we just don't talk. There's situational estrangement. Something happened, you step away for a while. And I did a survey on my YouTube channel in December 2023, and it's not scientific. I just had ideas in my mind about what caused estrangement, so I put them out there in a poll. The reasons that most commonly were given by most people, and I think it was over, almost 2,000 people answered this poll. 59% of them said interpersonal problems. So in that category, reasons that split families from within include verbal, physical, or sexual abuse, bullying, neglect, divorce, parental alienation, mental illnesses on either side, misunderstandings, destructive behaviors, or substance abuse. There are also external reasons for estrangement, and they're often around the spouse or the partner or friends turning the child against the family, or cultural differences as they move in a different direction, sexual orientation, gender identity, career, religion, differing values, politics, their perception of you being overly controlling, manipulative, or them feeling irritated, agitated, traumatized, disrespected, or other mental health issues that they may have around their perception of you as a parent. Other external factors. Behaviors leading to estrangement can be modeled from one generation to the next. Sometimes no reasons are given when a child cuts ties. They just disappear. And so the parents are left guessing. Or sometimes the reasons seem kind of minor in the parents' eyes. So they're left guessing what's the real cause here, because this reason that she's giving is seemingly not a big enough reason to cut people off. There are cultural forces at play. We are swimming against the tide of history. A lot of estranged children don't like to believe this because they are caught up in the tide of history, and because people don't study history anymore, they don't necessarily see it. And when you're young, you haven't been on the planet for as long, you haven't seen as many things, and you're just in it. I recommend reading The Fourth Turning, a book by William Strauss and Neil Howe. They are historians who studied thousands of years of human history, and they identified patterns that happen every 80 years or so. And then there's even larger patterns that happen, surrounding those within every 200 years. And according to this framework, we're now living in a cycle of history where we are in winter, and we are moving quickly into crisis. And that began in around 2008, and it will probably continue until around 2030. And then there will be some kind of destruction, and then from out of that will come some kind of new world order. Even Ray Dalio, who is one of the most successful investors on the planet, in his book, Principles for the Changing World Order, it's not an easy read, but it's a good read, where he actually also takes a look at history from a different perspective, from the investment perspective, to see, okay, he feels like if he understands what happened in the past, he can better prepare for what's going to happen in the future as an investor. He's made multi-hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. And he also has identified cycles that we are now in, and he acknowledges that we're in a destructive cycle. And so when we're in a destructive cycle, the forces of culture work against the traditional units like family or organizations that worked before but now don't. So there are things working against you. I made a whole video about it. I'll link it somewhere. But just to kind of list specifically some of these cultural forces at play: fading family values, rising individualism or narcissism, media tribalism. Mental health awareness is big now. I would say therapy has almost become a cult in some circles. Increased mobility, people can just move wherever they want. There have been cultural shifts in authority. Economic factors are definitely playing into it. It's much harder for young people to get a good start and do what was traditionally done in years past. There are legal factors that are changing how laws work in our countries. Cultural, political, and religious differences, of course, generational differences, normalization of estrangement. So these cultural forces are all at play right now. So some of the things you're going to go through are the shock and disbelief. That's right out of the gate. That's what we experienced. And, because you don't really necessarily even know this is a thing. Like when this happened to us, I didn't even know estrangement was a trend. I had no idea. And I continued to reach out because I thought that's what moms are supposed to do. Like I had this idea in my head that a good mom, reaches out to her child. Are you okay? Can I help? What can I do? And never gives up, because what kind of mom gives up on their child? So I just thought that's what I was supposed to do. I didn't realize at the time that in today's world, that was overstepping a critical boundary. You often struggle to accept that your relationship with your child has changed so drastically, often in a heartbeat, often at the slam of a door, an email sent, a ghosting. Just what happened is often the reaction. You're going to go through shame and regret. These are two big ones. You're going to be thinking, first of all, what did I do so wrong that my child won't talk to me? And second of all, what is everyone else going to think of me because my child won't talk to me? I mean, you imagine that the first thing they're thinking is, what the heck did you do? And I do get that a lot, from people who don't know me. They're like, what the heck did you do, in the comments on my channel? And this does lead you to question every little thing. Oh, was it that time where I didn't give her this? Or was it that time that I was late to her party? Or was it that time that, I yelled at her? What was it? Every little action, every little decision, every little mistake you made as a parent, you start running through that. Anger and frustration are also big emotions that you're going to experience. Anger is a natural and common response to estrangement. It seems like the dads move to this one more quickly than the moms. That's a generalization, but I've kind of seen that in action. But the moms go through it too. The moms get angry. It may take them a little longer to get to that, but they get angry, they get bitter, they get resentful. We all do it. It's a natural part of the grieving process. This anger can also be directed inwardly. So that means manifesting it at yourself as frustration and self-blame and sometimes self-hatred. It can get pretty bad. You need to watch out for that one. Other common responses are sadness and grief. So a deep sadness and sense of loss usually accompany estrangement. But the ambiguity of mourning someone who is still alive is confusing, which we're going to address more deeply in future videos. But the loss of the relationship itself is a big deal. Losing the relationship is one thing, but also you're losing the future experiences that you may have expected to have with this child. You know, gathering for Christmas or Thanksgiving or Mother's Day brunch or meeting a grandchild that you hope to have one day. All of that stuff is lost when the child estranges. Fear and anxiety. Estrangement can trigger fears and anxieties about your future, including whether or not the relationship can ever be repaired, along with fears about the well-being of your child. Where are they? What are they doing? Are they okay? Are they in trouble? These anxieties often extend to your current relationships, especially your other children. So, you know, if you have other children, you're going to naturally be paranoid that, oh my God, I don't want to ruin it with this child. And you may change your behaviors and become very anxious and stilted around this child because you fear doing the same thing or that child leaving too. And it can fear and anxiety can be super huge in estrangement. And then the last couple of emotions that, that may crop up for you in the shock phase, and there are more, this is an exhaustive list, but these are kind of the most common ones. Hope and denial. They work together as sort of an evil team. You can be fluctuating between hope for reconciliation and denial of the situation, and fluctuating between these two is normal. I mean, denial is certainly a part of it. I can't believe she did this. This can't be real. This must be a phase. It's going to blow over. She's never done this before. Maybe she's just having a really bad week at work. I mean, that's the denial that kind of comes into your head. And then, with that, the opposite is like, well, I hope she, gets over it and calls me or whatever. You may cling to hope as a way to cope with the pain, as many people do, but this can hinder the acceptance and healing process. If you hold out that hope in sort of an exaggerated, unhealthy way for 30 years, then you may be miserable for 30 years because your whole life is on hold, hoping that this child may someday come back. The shock and pain of emotion, basically, the way to think about what's happening here is that you are grieving over an ambiguous loss. And I invite you to look more into ambiguous loss because it is a special kind of grieving that a lot of people don't even know there's a name for and don't understand until they start looking into it. And then they realize, oh, this is what I'm going through. When you're grieving ambiguous loss, you really do want to acknowledge and validate your emotions. So you want to let yourself feel the feelings without judgment. They're chemical reactions to our environment. They come and go. They are temporary. They're not forever. However, you don't want to tamp them down and hide from them. You really do need to make space to sit with them and process. I highly recommend you take some effort to understand the grieving process. Coping with estrangement is a grieving process, and it's similar to mourning and death. And it includes all the emotions, the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But this is non-linear. It's not that neat line, I think it's called the Kubler-Ross. It is much more like a roller coaster that goes like this, and you will bounce around like a pinball between all the different emotions for some period of time. So just expect that. So ambiguous loss, in many ways, is more difficult because there's no real sense of closure. And other people don't necessarily know how to respond to it. So that's something we'll talk more about in future videos. You definitely want to make space for self-care strategies. This is a tumultuous journey dealing with estrangement, and you need to prioritize taking care of yourself first. You need to prioritize your health through proper nutrition and exercise, sleep, and relaxation techniques. If you're a person of faith, then you may already pray regularly, but I also encourage you to try mindfulness or meditation practices to help you manage some of the more intense emotions that you will experience. Seeking support. It's extremely important to seek support when you're ready for it, from friends, family, or mental health professionals that you trust. Isolation can intensify feelings of pain and disconnection, so reaching out is crucial. There will be a time where you do need to withdraw into yourself and kind of process the situation, but you also need to be aware that you can go too far with this, and at some point you are going to need to reach out to others and try to get some measure of help, support, validation, connection. It's all about balance. Journaling and recording is a very useful technique for processing estrangement. Many find that it's healing for them. It's a therapeutic tool for kind of processing those emotions. So you can have like an angry journal, a junk journal, as one of my friends calls it, where you just bang out all the junky things you feel, and once they're out, and that is a way to help process. Don't hold anything back when you are journaling. It is better to vomit it out than to pretend that you're not nauseous. Once it's on paper, it's out of you, and then, whether it's a piece of paper or a file, or you can just put it in a box, put it on a shelf, burn it, whatever feels right to you, but get it out, get it onto something else. If you ruminate endlessly and it's always inside of you, it's going to eat you up alive. You need to set emotional boundaries for your own health. This is to protect your emotional well-being while you're in this very fragile period. You need to become aware of your own shit talker, I call it. That's not the real you. That is not the real you. That's the ego. It's the id. It's that thing that holds you back. It's not the heart you. It's not the spiritual you. It's not the child of God you if you believe in God. It's not the universal energy if you believe in the power of the universe. Set limits on self-blame, okay? Set limits on rumination. At some point, sure, in the beginning it's more intense and you've got to spit it out somehow, but don't let it take up all day, every day till the end of time. You need to set goals of maybe limiting it to 15 minutes a day or whatever. That's not a hard and fast rule. Maybe you work down from, oh my God, I just spent 2 hours ruminating. Well, maybe tomorrow I'll just spend an hour ruminating, and then work it down. So here's your homework for this video. If you're truly serious about healing, these are some action steps that you can take to kind of move you forward in that process. Take them or leave them, it's up to you. But number one, I would love for you to make a list of 5 things that you're going to do to improve your health and mindset. Just 5 things that you could do to help yourself. Write them down on a piece of paper, put that where you can see it. And number 2, I highly, highly recommend spending at least 5 minutes every morning being grateful for something, anything. And if you're so depressed and so despairing that you can't think of anything, literally it can be as simple as looking at your hand and like, well, I'm grateful I have skin so that I don't bleed out all over the world. Or I'm grateful for this coffee mug because it holds my coffee. Or I'm grateful for my shelter. I'm grateful for heat or AC. I'm grateful for my husband, if I have one, or I'm grateful for my tomato plant that gives me tomatoes. I'm grateful for my dog that just loves me unconditionally. Whatever the thing is, start with that, find something else, and when you are being grateful for something, your mind will shift. And if you take up this practice every day, 5 minutes, that's all I ask, it will help you on that healing path. So again, not a therapist, just a mom who's gone from heartbreak to healing. I'm sharing my experiences of what helped me. Hopefully they'll help you too. If not, seek help from where you need it. but I wish you all the best on your healing journey. So next time, we're going to talk about aftershocks. You've gone through the shock period, you've processed the initial situation, the aftershocks, what comes next, and how do you deal with it? See you in the next video.